Hi, in this video we're going to see how to set up and run the simple application that's associated with the Pluralsight DDD Fundamentals course by Steve Smith and Julie Lerman. Amazing course, by the way. Just went through it, loved it. I'm sure you will too. But the simple application can be a little bit of a challenge to set up and run. So in this video, I'm going to show you 3 ways to do this. Docker, the easiest one. That's the one we'll start with. We're going to see how to set this up with Visual Studio using as little of the terminal as possible, really just Visual Studio's own UI. And then we'll see how to set this up using VS Code, which largely means using the terminal to install everything and get everything set up. All right, but the first step is cloning the repo. So we're going to start from scratch. It's at Dallas Pluralsight DDD Fundamentals. And we can I'm just going to do this from the terminal here. And clone that. Oops, I got to do git clone, of course. Okay, that should have worked. Yep. Pluralsight, and now that we're in here, we can just do Docker compose, and this will take about a minute on my machine to run. I'm starting from scratch. As you can see, I've got no containers running. I actually deleted all my images, so we're starting fresh. And depending on the speed of your machine, it might take a little longer, might be a little faster. We're about to find out together. Well, I guess I won't know how long it takes you, but you'll see how long it takes on my machine. And this will run for a little while. We'll just let that go. Okay, and we're all set, right? So we've got all the different containers running, and we can either see that from the command line, doing Docker PS, right, where we see the containers along with their ports that are associated with each one of them. So if you're used to the command line, that's fine. You can use that and then go in your browser, and the main app is this one, the Front Desk Blazor. So you'll access it using port 5100 on your local host. Or you can use Docker Desktop, which you likely have installed if you're using Docker. And here we can now see our containers, and we can go to our front desk Blazor and just do open with browser. Here we go. And from there, well, we can access pretty much all the other apps in this entire project, thanks to these useful links that Steve has put there. So for instance, right now we're in the main front desk app for scheduling, but we can easily go to the management app, the clinic management app. Notice how it changed the port here. And this is where we can add some doctors, clients, rooms, modify them. And we can come back here. And you can also access the RabbitMQ from here. Right, I'm already logged in. If that's not your case, you'll probably see this, right? In which case, the login is guest and the password is guest. There we go. All right, so we can have access to our RabbitMQ. Let's go back to our front desk. But you can also send emails. Or sent emails will actually show you a paper cut. Let's go to the public site. That's the vet clinic public site, from where you can actually send a test email like this. Now, if we go back to PaperCut, there we go. We've got our test. So everything's hooked up together. Everything's connected and talking. All the different apps are talking to each other. And that's all set up for you when you use the Docker method of running things. So using Visual Studio is going to be a bit more of a challenge. So what we'll do is using Windows Explorer, each of the main parts of the project they have their own solutions and their own projects, really. So let's just pick the front desk, which is the main one, and open a solution. And we're going to do that for each of the main 3 solutions. Yes. So that's one. Let's go back here and open clinic management like this. Okay. And finally, let's open vet clinic. Okay. All right, so one thing that we'll want to do, and let me just put this up here. This is the front desk one, but let's take a quick look back again at our README file here. It starts off in the section talking about Visual Studio and VS Code about you may need to configure a local NuGet server and put this package in it. It was a bit confusing to me at first. I'm not very used to that, but through a little bit of research, I found a relatively easy way to get this working. So what you can do is click on your solution, and you only have to do that in one of the solutions, then it'll be fine for the rest of it. So you can go to Manage NuGet Packages for Solutions. And in this section here, you get to select where your NuGet packages are coming from. Usually that will be NuGet.org. You can add an extra one here. We're going to call that, I guess, DDD Fundamentals. And the source will be whatever the README was saying. So front desk source, front desk Blazor, deps, Pluralsight DDD deps, Pluralsight, okay. Front desk source, was it not source? Yes, Blazor, deps, and that's the one, right? That's the one we're looking at. Here we go, date, okay. And that should, so let's, if we were to change this to DDD Fundamentals, and go to Browse, there we go. That's what we're interested in, right? So now that should be fine. We've got that step covered. Let's just go back to our README. Notice how it says that we're going to need to have RabbitMQ and papercut. The easiest way to do this, and the one I will be showing you, is to use Docker to set those two things up. So I'm going to do this from the command line. So we're starting RabbitMQ here, and let's open up another shell. Meanwhile, we'll do the same thing for papercut. And so that's up and running. And now papercut is up and running as well. Great. So now all we have to worry about is our actual .NET projects. And there's a few of them that we need to run for the whole thing to work properly. So let's go to our front desk solution folder for some reason. Okay, this is what we're interested in. So we've got different projects, but the two that we need to get going for this to work is first the front desk API. So we can actually do this from, oh, I thought we could. Oh yeah, we can. Front desk API. There we go. We can start it here. This should open up a browser with the Swagger documentation for that particular API. And here we go. Great. Right, so that's the scheduling part of our application. We can just take that, put that aside for now. And now we go back to our Solution Explorer, and we have to right-click on the frontdesk.blazor project, go to Debug, Start New Instance. All right, so now we've got the API going, and now we'll be serving up the actual front end, which opened up on the side, but here it is. But that's only one part of our entire, the entire project for the course. That's the front desk application along with its API. So that's great. One part of it is done. We can now move on to, let's see, let's go with clinic management. So I'm now in the clinic management solution. We're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to start the API first. We can do this from here. Clinic management API. Start that. It will open up browser with the Swagger documentation. It did that on the side, but here it is, right? API for the rooms, the patients, the doctors, the clients. That's basic CRUD stuff. Okay, put that on the side. And we will do the same thing. Go back to the Solution Explorer, still in the clinic management. Now we want to run the Blazor project. So again, we go to debug, start new instance. This will run. Open up a browser on the side here. There we go. And that's our clinic management Blazor app with the API that's running behind it. Okay, so that leaves just the one, the vet clinic solution. This one's easy. We can just do vet clinic public. That's correct. Yeah, we can just start that. It will again open up a browser. As you can see, your vet clinic. Great. Now, there's a few things you need to look out for. If you watched the previous section about Docker, everything was hooked up properly and everything worked with some nice links. For instance, let's see if I can just pull up the front desk. Yep. So this is kind of like the main application, and Steve, the author of the course, has included a lot of useful links so that you can just jump to the RabbitMQ, to the Papercut client, to the client management app, because they're all on different ports. The thing is, this was all done with Docker in mind, so a lot of those don't work because the ports aren't correct. For instance, if I was trying to go to the client management app by clicking on this link, it wouldn't work. It's looking for port 6100, but it turns out that we're using 6151 for this, right? So just be mindful of that, but it's fine. They are up and running. You just need to go straight, directly from your browser. Well, they will have opened up automatically if you're doing this with Visual Studio. And just as a proof that everything is working, let's go to our clients. And we can see here there's an appointment for Ben Franklin, which is Michael Jenkins' dog. So let's change Michael Jenkins' name. So we're going to go here, edit, and change it to Michael Jenkin. There's a save button here, and boom, Michael Jenkin, right? So that goes through RabbitMQ and everything's working the way you expect it to. So we can send a test email, go to Papercut management, and there it is, right? So that's the proof that everything is hooked up properly, and you can actually, you've got, everything's running in Visual Studio, different instances of Visual Studio, but you can set breakpoints and it'll work. All right, so that was for Visual Studio. Now let's go on to trying to set this up using Visual Studio Code and the terminal mostly. Okay, so what if we wanted to use Visual Studio Code and the terminal to get all of this set up and running and to be able to debug and change the code? So let's do that entirely from Visual Studio, but we're going to be using the terminal quite a bit. Okay, so let's open up Visual Studio Code. Code. And I'm actually going to clone this again. So clone repository. Here you could either enter the link, or you could do clone from GitHub and then do rdallas. What's it called again? rdallas/Pluralsight. That's the one. All right. And we want to get this under my projects. There we go. So it's cloning. Very exciting stuff. Would you like to open the cloned repository? Yes, I would, please. Okay. Now, again, we don't have a top-level solution file here. We have solution files in each one of them, each different separate app, I guess you could say, although the shared kernel is not an app. But now there's a lot of different ways we can do this. I'm going to try to show you a pretty simple way, probably not the most optimal if you're doing a lot of work in that repo, but it works for what we're trying to do here. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure that we've got the proper extensions working. So we need the C# extension. So let's enable that in our workspace. We'll also need our Blazor, Microsoft ASP Blazor. Although I won't be showcasing how to use this, I'll leave that up to the viewer if you want to debug the Blazor part of the app. But just know that you'll probably need to have this and to do a little bit of configuration there. But I'll show you a very simple way to get this up and running and to be able to debug at least the backend stuff pretty easily. So, okay, we've got this going. Let's start by getting our RabbitMQ and Papercut services running through Docker, but we're going to do this again through the terminal here. So we'll just copy paste from the README, real easy. Here's our RabbitMQ. I like VS Code's integrated terminal, so that's what I'm using. Feel free to use whatever you want. Okay, and we will be doing Papercut now. Papercut. Open a new terminal. PowerShell. Good. And we can actually rename this to Rabbit. And this one to Paper. Okay. Now listening, good. This is up and running, good. New terminal here. This time, let's get, actually, let me show you. I was going to navigate with the terminal, but with VS Code, you can very easily go open an integrated terminal. There we go. Can delete this one, not using it. I'm in the right folder, or almost. I think there's a source, yes, and there might actually be another one. Yeah, right. We want to get to the subdirectory that has the C# project in it, the .NET project, which is this one. Yes. So now we can just do .NET Run. Simple as that. Building and running. Good. And let's do the same thing here with our front desk. Now let's drill in and let's start the API first. So open an integrated terminal. So .NET Run. Building. And looks like we're up and running. Let's, yeah, front desk API. That's great. And same thing with Blazor. Open an integrated terminal. .NET Run. And looks like we're up and running. Front desk Blazor, perfect. And now what's left? VetClinic. VetClinic API first. Nope, we got that already. It's clinic management. Clinic management API. The reason this is all in red is that C# extension goes out and looks for a solution file to load, and it loaded the clinic management solution. I'm guessing it's all red because it hasn't restored any of the dependencies yet. So let's start up the API and see if that fixes it. Building, and this seems to work, and yeah, we still have a little bit of red, but that probably our next step is going to be fixing that. So open an integrated terminal .NET Run. And that's our last and final step to get all of this stuff running. But we've got all of them running. They all built properly. They're all running, and we can confirm that. So let's go in, let's say the vet clinic. It's on port 7151. We can just right click or control click on it. It should open in our, there we go. Okay, so proof that it's running properly. Let's do all of them actually. Let's do the front desk API. That'll open the Swagger. Yep. Let's open up the front desk Blazor. That's the actual app for the scheduling. Yes, all good. This one is the API for clinic management. Yep. And finally, the front end Blazor app for the clinic management. There we go. Okay. And just to prove that this is all working fine together, let's go in here and let's go in here. You can see that we have an appointment for the client is Michael Jenkin and the dog is Ben Franklin. Let's change Michael Jenkin to Michael Jenkins. And at the same time, confirm that both apps are speaking to each other using the magic of RabbitMQ. So we edit that, change it to Jenkins, save it, and here we go, client Michael Jenkins updated. And we can see that the name here has been updated. And we can also see that the emails are working the way we expect them to. So vet clinic, look at Papercut. We don't have anything in our inbox right now. If we go and send a test message, come back, go to Papercut, and here's the email. Right? So everything is hooked up properly. Everything's running. It's all running through our terminal windows. Now the question is, what if I want to debug? So I'll show you a very simple way. There's a lot of complex scenarios and configuration you can do with VS Code to get this all really nice and ergonomic for you and make all of this a little simpler, but it requires configuration. I'm going to show you a simple way to get debugging going, and that's basically just by using, attaching to the process that we're interested in. So how can we do that? So first of all, let's see, let's just use Swagger, my API for, let's say, schedule, the get API schedules. So we go into front desk, source, front desk API, endpoints, schedule, list. Okay, that should be the correct one. Put a breakpoint here, and now we can just do I think it probably wants us, so if you're getting into that, just generate for C#, and that's fine. And let's add a configuration, .NET attached to local. That's what we're interested in. Attach. Yep. Just get that going. This is very simple configuration. That's all it is here. So let's just make sure that you've got that. Some of them are already, so if we look inside some of, for instance, if you were to open front desk in VS Code as the workspace, then you would already have that available. But I've created it at the top level just for simplicity, because then we're going to be able to do it for any of the projects without having to open different instances. But that would be a valid way to do it too. That's kind of what we did for Visual Studio. We opened Visual Studio instances for each of these solutions. Now I'm showing you a different way to do it, where we just have the one instance and the one config at the top level. That's another way of doing it. Okay, so let's go ahead and run .NET Core attach. We should have it pop up that asks us, well, what do you want to attach to? Well, we're interested in the, front desk API. There we go. That's what we're interested in. The debugger's attaching. I think we're good. Let's go back to our source code. Where were we? Well, actually, let's just leave it. I remember putting the breakpoint, so let's just try running this. Which one was it? The get. Yeah. try it out, execute. And as we can see, there we go. Breakpoint was hit. Great. Can skip over. We can continue, and then that should, continue, and we get our response here. Now there you go. Short demonstration, but this is relatively simple way of setting up the app using the terminal and debugging with the Visual Studio Code. So I hope all of this was helpful. If you still have questions, if you run into some problems, it can be a little finicky. Maybe there's something on your machine, on your setup that is not working properly. Feel free to say so in the comments. I'll try to take a look and answer if I can. You can also ask Steve directly in the Pluralsight course. There's a discussion section where you can actually ask questions, so you can do it there as well.